Go ahead and pick it up. Thank you very much for this.
No problem.
In June of 2024, I graduated from college. My partner was there, my family flew in from Greece and other parts of the United States, and it was the biggest, greatest celebration for me. I even won a few awards from my department, which challenged a deep-seated belief that I didn't deserve recognition or appreciation for my work, that I was uniquely behind. But no longer was I behind. I was in my element. I was surrounded by the people that made me who I am, and then, a few days later, it was all over. I was just a non-binary gay Greek boy. I had a few $1,000s in the bank, rent to pay, cats to take care of, and a partner who I desperately wanted to make proud of me. So I started job searching. Without getting into the nitty-gritty, I sunk into a deep depression stemming from my anxiety living under white patriarchal capitalism with no clear way out and crushing responsibility. My family and I have been used to existing below the poverty line for as long as I could remember. They were also scattered in so many different parts of the world that I didn't have the privilege of simply calling up a family member and staying over at their place if I needed help or a shoulder to cry on. Unless I was willing to pay hundreds for a round-trip flight, of course. Ever since I've graduated, I felt on edge. Like I was solely responsible for my own survival and well-being or whatever. My partner was a ray of joy and all that, but I never wanted her to feel like she was responsible for me at any point. Probably ties into a feeling of Was this about gaming? I eventually found a full-time job which gave me the resources to build my first PC and start enjoying games that I never had access to before. I wanted to play Deus Ex, I wanted to play all the Dead Space games. I wanted to play Batman Arkham Origins. I grew up with that game and then lost access because backwards compatibility is not a feature to Sony, it's another price tag. The first game I booted up was Deus Ex. Look, I'm Gen Z. I'm used to crouching with control and reloading with R, so the controls took some getting used to, but I felt like I was at least confident enough to play through the story and get something out of it. Eventually though, I started struggling to figure out what felt like basic things. My flashlight would run out of energy quickly, leading to getting lost in dark areas that absolutely required one. My frame rate would slow down for reasons I couldn't explain. The game would not let me save manually. I had to quick save and hope that the single slot I had would never get corrupted or lost. I ended up troubleshooting online and finding out that the Game of the Year release of Deus Ex has a brightness problem. Adjusting the brightness from the menu didn't actually change any of the darker sections of the game. I learned that I had to install a mod to make it run properly, and that kind of broke me. I had never installed mods before. I could learn, but at that point I had been doing so much work to boot up and run Windows, trying to set up Steam and other software, I just wanted something to finally work. I quit Deus Ex for now. I decided I would make a separate video for it later. I quit Deus Ex for now. It's something I'm going to get to in a separate video later. I wanted to do something I was familiar with. Something I knew that I would finish. I played Arkham Origins, and I also played A Short Hike. I didn't finish either of those games, nor did I finish Baldur's Gate 3. I only got a measly 50 hours in. I knew the game was long, and I knew life was just happening, which made it almost impossible to focus on a game enough to really enjoy it. But all I wanted was to finish a game on my PC. It sounds so trivial when I talk about it now, which made it even more frustrating in the moment. If I can't do something as simple as finish a game that I was excited about, how could I expect to follow through on anything serious anymore? I want to be a filmmaker, I want to tell stories, but I can't just volunteer my services on the weekends and hold down a full-time job and invest meaningfully in gaming as a hobby. I have laundry to do. Then one day, I beat Dead Space 2. For about a week, I dedicated most of my free time. I didn't write, I didn't prepare meals, I didn't do laundry. When I was done, I felt so proud of myself, like I had broken a curse. But then life went back to what I was used to. Finishing games is still daunting, and here I find myself in a persistent position of precarity. So why was I in crisis mode just because I couldn't complete a video game? What was it I had before that I felt like I had lost? To understand this, I think we really need to get to the heart of what makes gaming valuable for people who benefit from it. Gaming, fundamentally, is play. It's exploring, trying new things, finding obstacles, limitations, and aha moments that serve as experiential learning. And you weren't just doing this when you played a video game. You did it when you were 5 years old, if you were ever at the playground imagining a world to inhabit. You were engaged in a process of design. You established rules and then followed through on those rules in your fantasy reality.
In games, learners can apply knowledge beyond facts, in an environment where the cost of failure is often low and a productive part of learning. Further, through communities of practice such as guilds and clans, and in affinity spaces such as fan websites and forums, players can learn with each other and serve as experts for authentic audiences.
You are also engaged in an interplay between constructionist and instructionist models of development.
Making games, as opposed to playing in already designed learning environments, has been shown to benefit the learning of school curricula when learners have to construct that knowledge in their designs. For example, Ka-Fi found that along with curricular knowledge, designing games for learning helps children learn coding, design, art, and creativity, as well as various related skills and interests involved in software production.
Games can provide the framework to teach you how to learn, but also how to teach and how to design. Have you ever had a long-term goal that you wanted to reach? Did you set deadlines for when you wanted to accomplish certain tasks? Did you design a work schedule to accommodate for your needs in the process? Congratulations, you were designing a game. Not in the conventional way that a game is defined within an industry, but you were setting arbitrary rules and guardrails that helped you accomplish something. I don't mean to liken this to the painstaking work that programmers have to do to make a video game work. I only mean to showcase that games are a part of our everyday lives. They don't begin and end at our computer screens or tabletops. They can be a form of self-development, and under the banner of capitalism, they can even be a form of resistance, especially for younger people who are victims of a rigid educational system that fails to cater to their needs.
Youth, in particular boys, are finding many literacy activities largely outside the realm of the school institution that engage them and sustain long-term interests, like video games, including computer and console systems. These games provide an interesting, engaging, dynamic, social space for many types of boys, both those who succeed at school literacy and those who struggle. They do not have to fit into any particular affinity group. They can engage without interference or sanction from adults, whenever they choose or when they have opportunities, and in ways that provide social capital for making connections with peers in real time and virtual spaces. The lack of boys' success in formal schooling activities, so frequently reported in public press, can, we argue, be framed as resistance, both unconscious and conscious, against meaningless, mindless, boring schooling or workplace activities and assignments. Instead, they engage in activities that provide them with active involvement and interest. Video gameplay also serves as a form of resistance to stereotypical views of boys as a category who, by virtue of the fact that they are boys, have been categorized as unsuccessful learners.
I too was categorized as a rowdy boy. Growing up with undiagnosed ADHD at the mercy of an impatient Greek schooling system meant that I was typically the last to receive the support I needed because I just didn't know how to ask for it. Privileged kids had parents who fostered a deep investment in the curriculum, which meant they were more likely to turn in assignments on time and earn the respect of their teachers. But if you fail, time doesn't just stop for you. You can't do it over and over again until you get it right. The curriculum moves forward, and you have more to prove and less incentive to do so. And if every failed attempt was just going to make your life harder, why try at all if you were already failing so much? Video games sidestepped this issue for me because whenever I failed, there was usually a checkpoint that I could start back from without taking on a heavier mental load. This allowed me to learn new things and get better at video games without the pressure of standardized testing, which, by the way, falls more in line with the definition of coaching, not teaching. There are certainly elements of education in the standardized schooling system, especially for students who are privileged enough to forget that they're in a race against time. But no matter how much education you retain from the standardized schooling system, the greater purpose is still to place you in a category. to college or not to college. Failing an assignment or a test is not a light mistake. It's not something you can try again as much as you need to, because no matter how many times you decide to try again, the rest of the curriculum is going to keep moving forward. Those students who can keep up will be rewarded with college acceptance, the chance to educate themselves even more, and move on to bigger and better things. Those who can't keep up will be shamed and punished with an even heavier workload that inevitably is going to make their lives harder, not easier. Education has no time limit. Education is learning, exploring, playing, fostering a deep connection with the world around you, appreciating the mechanisms that allow you to experience life. Coaching is goal-focused. You gotta learn this thing in this amount of time, and if you can't hack it, then pick up a squeegee and clean my goddamn car. Or join the military and help. For a system like capitalism to function, it's important to convince as many people as possible that this is just how the world works, that there's nothing they can do about it. And the schooling system sounds like a great place to filter out the bad seeds. You have one group that's going to do well because they have the support of parents, close family, and eventually the instructors who will make up the foundation of how they understand the world. These instructors, overwhelmingly, will be people who have successfully navigated the education system. They can show kids the ropes, give them a leg up, and ensure they graduate and move on in the hierarchy. Some people may use their education to do great things that make the world a better place. Others will engross themselves in business and management and waste away their time telling depressed people what to do. Either way, though, unless they come face to face with the injustices that enabled their success, they'll fail to see past the relatively small support systems that have enabled them to get this far in life. They'll never question the idea that they got to where they are by playing fair and doing the right thing. They'll assume poverty and homelessness just happens. Some people get it, some people don't. It's tragic, and we should do everything we can to ease their pain, but at the end of the day, I guess some people just didn't care enough about school or paying rent. The people who suffer most under this system are more likely to test poorly in it. Makes sense then why a person may divest from education if they're already starting off on the wrong foot. Because unless you're wealthy, which in all likelihood implies that you're also educated, the bulk of your time is going to be spent surviving, putting food on the table, and if you have kids, making sure they're not completely fucked. This might make it easier to understand parents who become confrontational when their child elects to play video games instead of doing homework or chores, or something that might help them get out of this situation. Games are still a relatively young medium despite exponential growth in computing power. The people who play games are still reckoning with older generations that may never have had easy access to interactive fictional worlds. And it's very common to see pushback from older generations in the face of technological innovation, and it's very easy to find examples of this in the entertainment industry. Some of the earliest media on YouTube about gamers centered young people who resisted adult authority. Content creators made spectacles about staying up way too late, arguing with parents, and then watching those parents destroy their child's console. The push and pull between the gamer generations and non-gamers is palpable still. I remember growing up and identifying so hard with those videos where the dad destroys his kid's Xbox. Like, they were funny and they were sensational, but they also hit close to home. I still feel like when I tell people that I play video games, some of them look at me like a child, like I can't accept the realities of adulting. No wonder there's such a fraught relationship between many young gamers and their authority figures, especially for families who live well below the poverty threshold. Gaming, under a system that favors productivity over humanity, is seen as a luxury, afforded only to those people who can prove their worth. You think you've proven your worth? This is your worth. But think about it from that older generation's perspective for a sec. They may never have had the opportunity to immerse themselves in a world that acknowledged their inherent agency. And even if they wanted to give it a try at this point, it can be hard to invest that time. They have to worry about childcare, food, housing. Why should they have to watch you do the exact antithesis of their years of painstaking work by playing Fortnite after dinner? Many impoverished parents already carry some amount of resentment because of the mental load they have to take on every day. Watching a kid be a kid, thinking back to when they used to have that, lamenting how they may never feel that way again in their lives, well, there's that mental load again. I can understand why a parent may get resentful when they see their child learning to resist institutional authority, especially if adherence to that same authority has been the only thing keeping them off the streets for however long.
Upper throat.
You want to go up there.
And
it doesn't.
Because that feels like more of like a pain, like angry.
I'm gonna try it. I'm gonna try it.
Okay.
I
I think when I graduated, I got the closest I've ever been to the way my family must have felt, watching me play video games when I was 9 years old. I don't have kids, but I recognize the fear that comes from going from having a safety net to being the safety net. Recognizing that my priority is to survive and enjoying my time comes second. This manifested when I realized that on a given workday, I have maybe an hour, ideally 90 minutes if I want to get something done. That time can be taken up playing Baldur's Gate 3, or I could write video essays, or do laundry, or do taxes. I can't make time for everything, and when survival is weighed against entertainment, it sucks to say, but there's an obvious answer, right?
Well, when I was on the verge of graduating, I was slammed. I was writing a 20-page paper, I was producing, directing, writing, and editing a 16-minute short film. I was also tasked with turning in the first draft of a 90-page feature-length screenplay. To be fair, I wasn't required to do all 3 of these tasks. I could have picked 2 and just done those well. But you don't dangle 3 tracks in front of a perfectionist when they're on the verge of graduating from college. I knew that after I graduated, opportunities to do what I'm doing would be scarce. Creating would cease to take up the majority of my lived existence, and any attempt at creating would inherently be political. A pushback at what the system actually wants me to do, which is keep working and then pass away. I was overwhelmed with tasks, not having enough time, and always reckoning with the fact that I was inching closer and closer to working life, or adult life. But I still played Lies of P. I got all the way to the end and I beat the nameless goddamn puppet because I'm awesome. I beat that game a day before my family was supposed to arrive for my graduation, which I find so fitting. I tackled all 3 tracks in my film department, and I got awards, and I beat Lies of P during the most turbulent time in my entire educational career. Why the fuck?
Ooh, it's getting dark. Alright, this is Video Games and Poverty. Every phase of my life actually has a story like this. Beating Bloodborne way back when convinced me that I stood a chance of doing well at standardized tests. At least well enough that I wasn't completely discarded by the educational system. Sekiro Shadows Die Twice got me through quarantine. On a big... Hello, Aubrey. You caught me while I was filming Video Games and Poverty. You're on camera.
Oh man. Video games, man. Poverty, man.
On a big picture level, games have often served as a tool to remind myself that I was capable of surviving hardship. It's difficult to do that when you find yourself stuck in a 1-bedroom apartment with 3 other people for an indeterminate amount of time. Family members at that. More than once I've felt like there were no rewards for what I was going through, like life was just suffering and then you die. It didn't help hearing about the endless stream of school shootings and suicide sweeping the nation. Amidst all that, I'm somehow expected to keep going to school, keep completing assignments, and act like everything's gonna turn out okay in the end, even though it just kept getting worse.
Video games were never going to fix any of this. They simply provided a challenge with a predetermined endpoint that I had control over. I could immerse myself in feelings of sadness and overwhelm, similar to the things I was going through during quarantine, except in this video game I had a katana and magical abilities, and most importantly, I could try again as much as I needed to. Sekiro, for example, was no walk in the park. I often got frustrated and discouraged, but the game never let me lose sight of my goals. There was a boss in front of me that I needed to beat, and that was enough to keep going. I eventually did beat that boss after however many tries, and eventually the whole game. There's really no good way to describe the flow state you get into when you successfully overcome the challenges a Fromsoftware game has to offer, and then beating that same game again, 19 times. Life, especially under capitalism, doesn't give you immediate rewards for anything. If you're a wage-based worker, you typically get paid 2 weeks after you actually did your job. Even so, you're probably paid way less than you should be, and on top of that, you have to reckon with the fact that that 2 weeks worth of paycheck is all you're gonna have until another 2 weeks. This determines how you spend, how you save, and how you invest in the things you care about. Scarcity engenders that survival mentality where it's more worthwhile to spend your money on things you actually need and not things that are gonna make you happy. It's impossible to go through something like that and not feel like you deserve it in some way. Like this is just what happens to people like you who can't snap their fingers and do better. Video games spit in the face of that, sometimes even to their detriment. In an article for Abstracting Games, Dr. Mabian, I believe that's how you pronounce their name, please correct me if I'm wrong,
Dr. Mabian analyzes a kind of cognitive dissonance surrounding many video game depictions of poverty.
The media we consume impacts how we see things like money. That impact doesn't need to completely determine how we think. Instead, it can solidify a cultural concept. And so the nature of poverty is something that doesn't affect us, since gaming is a luxury, it's not common to both live in poverty and play video games, is reinforced, and we are never brought to think about it. Likewise, the nature of our sympathy towards the impoverished is weakened. As I said before, when we tend to experience poverty in video games, it's through the lens of a minor character, maybe even NPCs, a beggar on the street as we walk by. We can just see that character and even feel bad for the character, and thus by extension feel bad for those who live in poverty in the real world. But our sympathy does not have any sticking power in this case, and without that sticking power, it is easily pulled away from our mind.
I love Dr. Mabian's perspective, and I'm going to hold on to it for a future video essay about pathologic, but let's focus on one contrarianism at a time. As one of those uncommon gamers who has both lived through poverty and played video games, I love when they control for scarcity because it's something I'm not going to see in my real life anytime soon. And as valuable as Dr. Mabian's perspective is, it ironically helps to illuminate the ways that video games can serve as an antidote, or an alternative scenario, if you will, for those still living in poverty. Your average adventure game will plop you into a world where you got a coin just for walking around.
Yippee! Yip, yip, yay! Yippee!
You got another coin for hitting a piece of dirt. When you hit a snag, you're never that far off from finding a solution to it. And if there's a piece of armor you find that you can't afford, you're probably not far off from a quest that will reward you with the funds to do so.
Yay! Yip, yip, yip! Yippee!
Even at their hardest, there's a satisfying comfort in games, knowing that there's another person who has designed this world so that you have a chance of actually figuring out any of these challenges. John Robson and Aaron Meskin wrote a great scholarly piece that analyzes video games as self-involving interactive fictions, or SIF. Their goal was to get at what values a playthrough ascribes to the player themselves, divorced from the characters in the game's narrative. Quote,
Gamers typically make a variety of first-person claims concerning the games they are playing. I defeated the dragon. I was killed by a creeper, and so on. And this is reflected in the use of the generic second person in much video game criticism. We argue that this talk should be taken seriously. The player's actions genuinely make things about the player true in the fiction of the game.
video games can make things true about you that you may never have had the chance to prove otherwise. The fictions you immerse in can rescale the odds of success, if not in your favor, then at least to balance for the challenges you're going to face. Ingenuity, a tough skin, the ability to adjust your strategies in the face of new challenges, these are things that any human can learn, provided they have the resources and the motivation to do so. For a lot of people, including me, that came from video games. This also makes me look at non-gamers very differently, especially people who have a decent amount of privilege in their non-fictional reality. People who have the resources to travel or learn how to ski or surf. These are all activities that can ground you in your non-fictional reality and help you appreciate the inherent beauty of the world around you. It can help you to appreciate your lived experience more than any mode of fiction ever could. Why play a video game about climbing a mountain when you can just climb a mountain? The answer is pretty simple for a certain type of people. One experience is more real than the other. But those aren't the only type of people who may want to climb a mountain. Think about people with disabilities. Think about people whose parents could never afford to foster a love of the outdoors. People who learn to see outdoor activities more as a financial strain than as a chance to play outside. Do these people not also deserve the satisfaction of climbing a mountain? Of seeing the outcome of days, weeks, or months of hard work? Do these people not also deserve to dream? I'm left wondering how many people are going to live the rest of their lives feeling limited by their situation. People who may never pick up a new video game or another piece of helpful technology because of shame, not knowing where to start, or simply not knowing how to work their digits on a controller. These are people who may get frustrated and decide that this is where their capacity to improve ends. They've hit a brick wall that society just isn't ready to help them with. Gabriella T. Richard, in this article, identifies stereotype threats which essentially prevent certain demographics from having easy access to gaming as a medium for play.
Some researchers have argued that an underlying problem in addressing equity is the continuing practice of designing technology and environments that assume a content-agnostic stance. or that the idea that technologies are value-free. However, in a culture where consumption influences production, this is hard to disentangle. For example, researchers have found that many of the practices in commercial gaming influence constructionist learning around games and computing.
Hey everyone, Editing Thomas here. This quote was originally far longer, and it became way too easy for folks to lose the point I was trying to make. Basically, Richards describes a kind of digital divide. On one end, you have people who have easy access to internet, computing power, and the technology they need to even think about playing games. On the other, you have folks lower on the socioeconomic ladder, people who may not even have access to computers, let alone somebody who can inspire them to explore this technology. Richards gives the example of disparities in computer access along race lines, which, quote, made it more challenging for African Americans compared to whites to engage in a variety of computing practices that can be fostered through games, such as modding, unquote. So, the lessons people can learn from playing games, like confidence, coding, and a general hunger to learn new things, all that is dependent on the culture you're born into, and whether or not your demographics line up with who is seen as knowledgeable and capable with computing.
In other words, implicit preconceptions continue to impact who is supported and who receives social capital to engage in technology in a playful and productive way. While there was a time we could trivialize gaming as simply a leisure time activity that has limited effect on what we deem more constructive pursuits, now, however, research points to the importance of such activities in influential and instrumental learning and workforce activities.
This makes me a tad depressed. Here I am talking about how video games have helped me find an alternative means to build resilience and confidence. But at the end of the day, there's still an overwhelming number of people who are underprivileged and will never find a way to know their own potential. I can talk all I want about how video games are more accessible than renting gear and climbing a mountain for a day, but the average PS5 is still $500, $550 after tariffs here in, yeah. And that's not accounting for the actual video games that you have to buy, the accommodations you may need to make for a disability, and obviously the time investment that you could be spending doing laundry. I inherited gaming from my brothers, who in turn inherited a love of entertainment from my parents. This love allowed me to connect with other people at school who also loved video games for their own reasons. I got to immerse in a culture of sharing, building, cheating. I got to have my cake, eat it, and realize that I wanted more.
The technology of video games allows players to cheat by downloading codes or finding glitches in the game. One participant explained that players use cheats because at the moment they're so angry or frustrated with the game that they just want to go ahead or wonder, wow, it would be so great if I had that. By using cheats and engaging in a community that understands the purpose of cheats and the importance of them, players can band together to resist traditional and mainstream rules as a community, using their social connections to succeed at their gameplay.
If I didn't have this medium, I may never have thought to myself that my situation could be different. I may have ended up a closeted Greek man with comfort, money, and no idea that I was wasting my life. I never really thought about this much, but it's a privilege to be able to see a lived reality you dislike and imagine a better one. Whether it's by looking up a walkthrough, using cheats, or simply asking for help, the people around you who found some measure of success only did so based on the examples set for them, and the same is true for any of us. I only have my lived experience to inform what I want to do next, how I want to improve, the type of person I want to be, but we don't all start our lives with an example to strive towards. We don't all start out with a support system that can bail us out of trouble if we need it. I don't know what I would have done if I didn't have my 4 older brothers, my mom, my dad, and my extended family to help me out when I started struggling in college. I originally wanted to make this essay about gaming and how it can serve as an antidote for poverty-stricken individuals, but the fact is, poverty is not something that you're just born with. It's something you're born into, like a kingship. It's not essential, and it doesn't have to be this way, but it will be for the foreseeable future. There are people you will never know who will directly impact your ability to live a satisfying life so that they can get a higher paycheck.
There are also going to be people living out in the cold so that people like you with marginally more resources can have access to opportunities for rent-controlled apartments and safe neighborhoods, whatever the fuck that means. I wish there was more I could do. I'm at a crossroads in my life. My family thinks I'm working so that I can eventually move up to higher paying jobs, transition into filmmaking full-time, doing the thing, as it were. But the more I write this, the more disillusioned I get. Am I just going to be another lucky number, climbing the ladder so I can eventually attain some amount of comfort in this depressing-ass life? How much longer can I keep acting like everything is fine so that I don't scare people away? I got to the point I'm at because I had access to video games, specifically challenging ones. To some extent, I've defined myself by my ability to beat games and translate what I learned from those victories into my lived experience. It all feels so quaint when I compare using video games to navigate high school or college with the realities of adulting. One of the first heavy games I ever played was Batman Arkham Asylum. The first time I tried playing it all the way through, I came up against Bane. One of my brothers said to me, "Nah, you're not gonna beat Bane." I did beat Bane, and I felt great. In hindsight, that wasn't the most difficult boss fight in gaming history. It probably wasn't even the most anything in gaming history, really. But I didn't believe that I could beat Bane. I trusted my brother when he said I wouldn't make it. I kept trying because I wanted him to be wrong, not because I knew that he was wrong. There's a big difference there. Those experiences are always in the back of my mind whenever I'm playing video games. I'm never just exercising my willpower or my problem-solving skills. I'm also fighting a deep-seated belief that has been clawing for attention in my brain ever since I started going to school. The feeling that I can't do hard things, the feeling that I can't do well at tests, the feeling that I can't beat Bane. When is that monkey gonna climb off my back? Who knows? Maybe never. At this point, I'm just trying to find ways to manage it. Playing new video games has obviously been a great way to do that, exposing myself to challenges that I'm not used to, playing my first JRPG. Just different ways that I can remind myself that that's not all I am. When I graduated, that monkey felt very loud indeed. Video games took up valuable real estate in my week. Time that could be spent doing more quote-unquote productive things. Time that could be spent writing even more amazing video essays like the one you're watching now. I think that's really what plunged me into crisis mode. The possibility that I don't even have time to do the fun thing that inspires me to do more creative things. But I can't just stop playing video games, can I? If I do, then I'm basically letting my imagination get swallowed up by my responsibilities. I have to keep fighting for that time, even if it hurts, because I would rather be juggling a bunch of different time commitments than killing my capacity to experience satisfaction. And I mean real satisfaction, not the kind that comes when you stuff away your humanity in order to beat capitalism the game. I'm not going to get that satisfaction anytime soon. And if I'm being honest, the American dream is something that I would return to GameStop if I could. It would be much easier for the powers that be if I just gave up, or stayed in this position for the rest of my life. It would be even easier for them if I started to believe that all the hardship I face is my fault. Bet they never expected I'd start complaining on YouTube. But I'm gonna stay alive. I'm gonna keep showing up for my partner, my friends, and my family, and I'm gonna keep queering the status quo by any means that falls within my moral compass. Did you know that? Did you know queer can be a verb and not just a noun? I'd define it for you, but that would actually kind of hurt the point. To queer is to complicate in the most basic sense of the term. If you think I just contradicted myself, congratulations, I just queered you. I learned this term from my gender studies professor in Queer Theory 420. It's probably stuck with me more than any editing technique. It's definitely stuck with me more than color theory. This final page in my script has gone through the most revisions out of any part because the ending keeps changing. What you just saw is what I wrote months and months ago in a furious rampage during the peak of workplace depression. I was trying game after game after game and getting nowhere. I definitely wasn't creating for myself. I was just doing my job, going home, exercising, and smoking weed. Since then, I managed to switch to a part-time status at work. I can do that because I don't have kids, I don't have a car to pay insurance and gas for, I only have rent, bills, groceries, and cannabis to worry about. There's probably another video on the horizon about the pressure I feel to buy a car because of where I live, but first things first, I have a surprise for you. Spoilers ahead for Deus Ex, Pathologic 2, Planescape Torment, A Short Hike, If on a Winter's Night for Travelers, Batman Arkham Asylum, not Baldur's Gate 3, and Persona 5. That was my first JRPG and I had a blast. My family gifted me a Switch Lite for my birthday, which allowed me to play video games in 30-minute increments while busing to and from work. It was around this same time that I first started jotting down thoughts for the video you're watching. Fast forward to now, and the game's motto, "Take your time," rings truer than ever. I haven't even given kudos to the game I played the most during this turbulent time in my life. The game that was there for me when everything else felt too heavy. The game that never made me feel pressure to complete it. Elden Ring Night Rain. Before the most recent DLC had come out, my brother and I managed to kill every Night Lord and their significantly harder Everdark Sovereign forms. I'm thankful for that time. When we launched a game, all that other pressure melted away and I felt like I was truly playing just to play. My brother, who I'll never beat in terms of sheer playtime, was a constant reminder that we're here, together, and that's all that matters. I'm middle fingering it. Thank you, Fromsoftware, for all the years of comforting challenges. I know you're a corporation, and your next game is a Nintendo exclusive, and Night Rain probably needed a much larger production team. There was an ending for this script where I beat none of these games, but I resolved to keep moving forward because in the few months since I had finished writing, my life changed drastically. I only work part-time, like I said. I take independent contracts here and there to fill out the loose ends, and this allows me the time I've always needed to think, play, and educate myself further. I don't think about work very often.
My name is Automatron, I do comedy, and I'm running audio for this stage. What can I say? I'm indecisive.
Despite all that good stuff, though, I still feel like I'm surrounded by people who need to work their asses off day in and day out because if they don't, they won't make their nut.
What makes you want to work for immigration enforcement?
You see, I got a nut.
I think one of the greatest privileges I've had is that I've been able to discern just how big I want my nut to be, and I've been able to take steps to actually shrink it. This matters because the nut is not life. The nut is a cost of living. It's a means to an end to get back to that state of play. And I'm just about done having only 48 hours to do that. I think one of the most important things I learned playing video games during this time is that I do deserve feelings of satisfaction, of accomplishing hard things. I don't just need to be trying to prove myself wrong anymore. I got to experience a version of self-actualization that was divorced from the system I was born into. This made it easier for me to recognize that the outcome dangled in front of me by my political landscape is bullshit. It requires so many other people to fail so that I can succeed. But I have more important things to do. At this point in my life, barely scraping by with the funds that I do have, it's easier to recognize what real satisfaction is. It's not the relief of a middle-class income or the benefits of a high-rise apartment. It's having some agency over how I navigate the challenges I face. The thrill of finding a new book at the library, of growing a garden, and of course, that first sip feeling. Once I'm able to meet all of those basic needs, I hope I can achieve another kind of satisfaction. The kind that comes from developing a skill I can use to help a friend, of building community, easing access to information, entertaining. You deserve to accomplish hard things. You deserve the satisfaction of a life well lived. That may not come from the place you thought it would, but it sure as hell beats sleepwalking your way to a comfortable chair and a desk, sedated into ignoring the real harm you cause just for wanting a sense of comfort and belonging. Yours parasocially, Automatron. Fuck you, this could be anything. So yeah, Pathologic 2, great game, 10 out of 10, but I don't know how to turn it off. Subscribe to my Patreon and maybe I can lower the difficulty. Thank you dearly to Rachel Ricketts for writing this book, Do Better. I'm suddenly realizing the long shot from very far away was a terrible idea.
It's where I first learned the term mental load, and it's been the single best jumping off point for me to learn more about white supremacy and Black and Indigenous women of color's precarious position in American history. Thank you to my friends and family for lending their voices to this project. If you're seeing this, I'm terrified, but you guys make it worth it. You're the reason I do what I do, and I hope you learned something along with me. Fuck you, H-Bomber guy, for convincing me that Deus Ex was worth playing. It probably put me through more grief this year than Pathologic 2, and that game caused me to get a parking ticket. You wanker. Thank you, Vanilla Mace, for playing Marvel Rivals and keeping my partner engaged during the most turbulent winter we've ever persisted through. And that game caused me to get a parking ticket. Nope. I still have the video of the first time they got to play with you, and you have made this whole experience feel much easier, so thank you. While I was making this video, I came across another first-time video essayist named Sane Retry. Their story about video games and poverty inspired me and helped me realize that maybe I'm not kidding myself in wanting to tell my own story. I also highly recommend Playtesting Adventure by Noah Caldwell-Gervais, but he's a much bigger YouTuber. He'll be fine. Check out Sane Retry. Fromsoftware already has more love than they deserve. This video is not sponsored by Ground News.